the topic. You can get there, but can you stay there, right? A lot of people have lost fat, but they gain it back, so they can't maintain it. And so this idea or is from built on a concept I learned from one of my mentors, Nick Peterson, and it's called your maximum achievability is not your maximum maintainability, right? And so, yeah, maybe you can lose 30 pounds in the next 60 days, but can you maintain that, right? And the answer obviously is, for vast majority of people, it's no, because the way that they start off doing stuff is not, you can't maintain it. They're doing stuff that they don't like, that they're forcing themselves to do. And so, at some point or another, you're not going to keep doing stuff that you don't like. So you're gonna go back to your old habits, and you're gonna gain all that weight back. A lot of times more than what you had started off with, because then the emotions start to come in. It's like, oh my God, I'm gaining weight again, and so you're in a worse place than when you started. Now, when we want to look at this from a practical standpoint, like, so okay, well, I do want to not just lose fat. I want to maintain it, and I want it to be enjoyable and peaceful, right? And these things are very important, because another thing that could happen, that happens a lot, is you could wreck yourself doing the stuff that you would need to do to lose a lot of weight really quickly. You can cause health problems. You can cause injury if you're working out, twice a day or whatever. And, rather than say, 60 days, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. Why not do it in a little bit slower, and you're doing enjoyable stuff, and you're not all, going crazy and frantic and all this kind of stuff, and do it over 6 months. Why not do it over 6 months, 8 months? Because then it's much more likely to stick long term. Okay, so let's talk about that. That's the idea, and now let's talk about how do I actually do that. Okay, so first of all, is going to come down to your nutrition is going to be the number one thing, because if you eat too much food, if you eat too many calories, it doesn't matter, you're gonna gain weight. And so that's always number one. And rather than starving yourself, okay, I've talked recently about how much fat you can actually utilize, how much of your body fat you can utilize per day. There's plenty of research and studies that have been done. Your body can tap into about 31 calories per pound of body fat that you're carrying, right? So the simple example that I always like to use is, if you have 20 pounds of fat on you that you need to use, you can tap into about 620 calories of that per day. Okay, so 31 out of each of those 20. So that's important, because if you go beyond that, now you're tapping into, your muscle, you're tapping into your glycogen stores, right? That's just a fancy way of saying that some of the carbs that you eat get stored in your muscle cells and your liver, right? For use during physical activity. That's the first fuel source. So when we understand that, it goes back to, you are only going to lose 2 to 4 ounces of fat per day. So that means it comes back to about 1 to 2 pounds per week. So use that as the benchmark, right? You don't want fat loss, weight loss faster than that, because you will have problems, okay? So that's the biological limit. Now, going about that, you set your calories between 15 and 1,500 and 2,000. That's going to be pretty much across the board. You're going to fall somewhere in there. If you're a little bit shorter, you know, maybe it's 13 to 1,400. If you're a little bit bigger, you know, you can go up to 2,500, but it's going to be, for most people, 15 to 2,000. Now, the next thing is when we set that, now when we're going about making our food or eating, we want to have 5 things in mind. I call these the 5 lenses of fat loss, okay? So if you just remove all the labels of eating of food, like, this is good for you, this is bad for you, and just look at these 5, life will get so much easier, okay? And so the first one is high protein, okay? We're not gonna get into all the reasons why. We're just gonna say, like, you want protein, okay? You want 100 to 150 grams for a vast majority of people. I like to have it a little bit higher because protein fills you up more. It actually uses more calories to process it than fats and carbs. And obviously it's important for muscle, etc., blah, blah, blah. Number 2 is that it has to be high in enjoyment. That goes back to that first idea. Like, if you're eating stuff that you hate and you're forcing yourself to, you're not going to do it for a long time. You want to do it in a way that you look forward to your food. If you do not look forward to your food, then you have a major problem, okay? So high enjoyment is number 2. Number 3 is low calorie density. If you're just eating donuts and like Twinkies and whatever, obviously those are very high in calories, calorie density. You're gonna run out of those 1,500 calories like this, okay? So then what we wanna do is we go, okay, well, what are the low calorie things? Low calorie density. It brings us back to like mostly real foods, but also you can make things that would typically be high calorie density and you can make them low calorie density. So for example, burritos. Everybody loves burritos. The burrito diet is based on this principle. Typically, if you go out and you get a burrito, it's extremely high calorie density. But if you start to make your own burritos, you can bring, the main culprit is the fat grams in any food. Because that, and let me tell you the reason why. The reason why is 1 gram of fat has 9 calories and 1 gram of proteins or carbs have 4 calories, okay? So just inherently, right off the bat, you will be able to get more food for less calories. So when we start to make our own food and make it low calorie density, you can take a lot of stuff that you enjoy and remove as much of the fat as you can, and it will become low calorie density. For example, burritos, for example, burgers, chicken sandwiches, enchiladas, tacos, what else? There's so many things that you can turn from high calorie to low calorie by removing the unnecessary fat content of things, okay? Especially when you make it yourself. Then, and it's also when you measure things, like when you go to a restaurant, you have no idea how much sour cream they're putting or how much guacamole they're putting, or did they cook their meat in oil or lard, right? But when you make it yourself, you can make it extremely lean and taste just as good, if not better. So we got the first three, we got high protein, we got high enjoyment, we got low calorie density, and then we go to 4 and 5, which is convenient. Okay, these are all things that are feeding into the maximum maintainability. I want to remove as much friction in my preparation of eating as possible. So if you have these super complicated recipes that take 40 minutes, right? And there's 50 steps and there's, 30 ingredients, that's not very That's why the burrito is one of the kings of this whole thing. That's why it's called the burrito diet, is because it doesn't take very long, and you just wrap it in foil, you just throw it in the microwave and you're good to go, right? And so convenience means that it has to be fast and easy to prepare and eat and clean, okay? And then lastly, it has to be easy to track, because we want to track so we have certainty about what we're doing. We don't want to be in the dark and just guessing. So for easy to track, I always like to say like less than 5 ingredients, okay? So when you have those 5 lenses of fat loss and you start to look at food through those, then fat loss becomes easy. It becomes enjoyable. And then you can stay there. You can stay there forever. You can lose 30 pounds in the next 6 months and you won't gain it back, right? So that's all I wanted to say today. And I want to just re-emphasize that if you're not taking into consideration that you can go really fast but you can't maintain it, and you don't switch from trying to go as fast as you can, you don't switch over to what is the speed that I can maintain, then it's not going to work. It's not going to be fun. And you're probably not even going to get there, right? Because most people, when they try to do really hard ways of losing fat, they don't even usually make it a week. A lot of times, how many times have you said, okay, I'm going to start, 2 days later you're done, because you're forcing yourself to do things that you're not enjoying, that are not maintainable. So again, the practical tool of this is the 5 lenses of fat loss, okay? And I would say, so like we're starting the nutrition challenge in May, right? Every month in the burrito diet, we have a different challenge that we're working on. And next month is going to be a nutrition challenge, right? So this is exactly what we're going to be doing. Fat loss is a skill, right? It's not that you can't do it or, you know, it's whatever. No. You just don't have the skill. So each month we're working on a different skill. For nutrition, this is what we're going to do. We're going to choose 2 or 3 recipes that we're going to work on and practice for the whole month, okay? And they will be definitely keystone foods, because they'll be high in protein and they'll be high enjoyment, low calorie density, convenient, and easy to track. And rather than like, you know, usually people don't even like, we want to make things as concrete and simplify as much as possible. So we're not going to try 50 recipes. We're going to work on one recipe until it's super delicious, until it's super fast and easy, until it's super easy to track. And we're just going to keep iterating on that, right? For an entire month. Nobody does this. Nobody does that. Everybody's looking at, they got a recipe book of 70 different recipes. Like, you're, no. Pick one and work on it for the entire month. Make it more delicious. Make it more convenient. And, you know, one really important strategy in this is like, okay, well, maybe you like some variety. Okay, cool, right? Variety doesn't mean you need 35 recipes, a different one for every day. A variety, you can achieve variety with, man, these allergies are. So we can achieve this by doing the following. We can have a base food, for example, burrito. What do we need for that? We need a base protein. So, you know, let's say we're going to use the Instant Pot, and we're going to we can, right off the bat, we can alternate between chicken and steak. So now we can make 2 days worth of chicken or whatever, or, you know, 3 days worth. In 40 minutes, it'll be done. And you literally, all you got to do is put the stuff in and press a button, which is a 5 minute process, right? We've removed so much friction for this, and we can just have it in a Tupperware ready to go. Now, here's how I inject some variety into this. Well, I can use that chicken in a burrito. If I'm at home, I might just put it into, make a taco. If I have a little bit of time, I can make a little bit, or I can make some enchiladas, right? Which is, those are all the same ingredients: tortilla, meat, salsa, and a few other things if you want, right? But if you have a air fryer, you can make crispy or crunchy tacos, right? So that's how you have to start thinking about it. Also, let's say you're in a hurry. Okay, well, instant rice, got your meat ready, throw it in, get some salsa, good to go. You could do a different variation. You could go, you got your meat, you got rice, throw on teriyaki sauce, right? But what we want to do is we want to minimize the options at the beginning and really dial in the process for prepping the protein, and then having a few simple options that you can fit for different situations, right? Because what we really want to think about is like, I don't want to be in a position where everything has to be perfect for me to be able to lose fat. I want to be able to lose fat in any situation. I want to be able to adapt, okay? So this is what I call anti-fragile fat loss. There's no situation that is going to prevent me from my closing the gap, right? So anyways, that's all for today.